Welcome to the Quick Stop F1 podcast. My name is Tasha, and you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that. Today, I have a fun, special episode for you all. We are just coming off of a bye week, so no races to talk about. However, there's always something to talk about in Formula One, and today it's going to be fashion. Today, my guest is Eliza Huber, and we are going to get into some stuff. Eliza is the senior fashion editor at WhoWhatWear and an F1 enthusiast. And I also saw F1 fashion archivist. We can get into that in a second. But Eliza, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited
to talk all things F1 with you.
Me too. I am so excited to talk to you. Any opportunity I can get to talk about like fashion, marketing, any of that stuff as it pertains to Formula One, like I'm always game for that. I saw some of your posts yesterday on Twitter, and I was just, wondering how you're doing today. You were literally 5 feet away from Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton. Are you breathing? Are you well?
Like melted into the floor.
Yeah.
You should have seen me when they were like, oh, they're in that corner. And I was like diving and dipping and jumping over people to get the best shot. We'll do anything for the video.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kind of wild. Like I had been to one other event, a Mercedes event, and they were both there in George, but a bit farther away.
Right.
So to be so up close with such an angel of a human is kind of, it's shocking in a way.
Yeah. I saw all the tweets come through like kind of at the same time. And I was just like, how are y'all this close to Lewis and like being civilized? Because I think I would have absolutely just gone feral. Like, yeah.
I wasn't civilized until like was in the eye line. Because then you're like, compose yourself.
Exactly. Act right.
I have to be respectful.
Act like you have some sense, yeah.
I don't want to be acting crazy in front of him of all people.
And your work, I'm sure, is going to be like, you will not be going back to any of these events. What was the event for?
It was with WhatsApp and Mercedes, and it was kind of done to celebrate the American presence of Formula One and how big it's gotten since kind of COVID and all of the creators coming about and Drive to Survive and this whole mesh of lovely things that came together, not COVID, but came together to create the phenomenon that is now kind of America's interest in Formula One. So they wanted to celebrate that. And then they, like the big thing with it was that they had projected this incredible video onto the Empire State Building.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's wild. I did see that. And it turned green as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
WhatsApp green.
Right, exactly. The beautiful shade of green that they have. So tell us a bit more about you. Tell us about your writing, your love of Formula One. Like, how did this all come about?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to work in fashion since I was a little kid, but didn't always know in what way that I would kind of pursue it.
Yeah.
Until college. I actually interned at WhoWhatWear one summer in college in New York. And it was an editorial internship, and I got to write a few stories and just see what life was like up close as an editor, and really fell in love with it. And so from there, just continued to try to do as many internships as possible. And eventually, when I graduated, I started at Refinery 29 on the edit team there. And I stayed there for like 3.5 or 4 years, and then switched over to WhoWhatWear, back to where it all started. And I've been here for about a little over 2.5 years. Nice. And love it. And one of the amazing things about being an editor here is how much freedom there is to really explore the things that you're interested in, even if it's not necessarily like the bread and butter WhoWhatWear content. And so I've always been someone who gets kind of obsessive over things. Like,
same.
Yeah.
Hyperfixated. Yeah.
Yes. And so like when I when I first started watching Formula One, which was like 2017, 2018,
Mm-hmm.
it quickly became something that I needed to know everything about and wanted to be surrounded by as much as possible and get my foot in the door as much as I could.
Yeah.
And so here, starting here, I really was given kind of the ability to explore that fashion F1 angle that felt
Mm-hmm.
natural here, but also still touched on the part of the sport that I loved. So I've gotten to write a couple of really amazing features that were such a pleasure
Yeah.
to work on and speak with incredible people in the sport and outside of the sport, from brands to other editors who have explored sports fashion
Mm-hmm.
to the creator of League Fits to, all across the board. And it's been such a pleasure. And I've gotten to go to races and events like the one I did
Yeah.
last night. And yeah, it's like a dream come true.
Yeah, that's really the dream. I mean, and I was going to ask you, I think you kind of answered it, in terms of, was there any convincing that needed to occur to get people on your team to, want to cover Formula One and fashion? It's obviously been such a huge like phenomenon, especially in the last few years. It's just kind of exploded in popularity here in the
Hmm.
States. So yeah, I wasn't sure if there was any sort of convincing that you needed to do, but it sounds like you kind of had that empowerment to just go and make that decision to
Yeah, I
start
mean,
covering it.
the first story that I wanted to write was a larger feature. It took a long time.
Hmm.
You know, the work that we do every day, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so it gets pushed around or whatever, but in the end it was really like, we trust you, go for it. We know nothing about this,
Right.
but let's see what comes of it, sort of. Um, and it only really built more my interest, and I think interest
Yeah.
from people around the team. And now a ton of people on the team love Formula One, and we talk about fashion all the time and the sport. So
Yeah.
it's been really fun to watch as people who didn't know anything about it are now kind of dipping their
Converted.
toes in
Hmm.
or are already obsessed with it. So
Yeah.
it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, just like in a smaller sort of way through Instagram, because how it tells you everybody's business, like what they
Yeah.
like. And I'll see friends who I've never like really seen talk about Formula One, like engage with like the Mercedes F1
Hmm.
account or like Lewis Hamilton account. So it's been interesting seeing like, people become slowly interested in the sport. I think fashion has a big role in it personally. I'm sure you probably think similarly.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just interesting, I think, the level of like kind of discourse that kind of can be created through fashion. Specifically, you had an article and you, I don't know if you intended to do this or not, but the level of like back and forth was nuts. It was an article titled NBA, Now F1, a study in athletes making a stylish entrance. And Alex Albon was quoted in that article as saying, he is just as big as, if not bigger than, the sport. And Twitter was ablaze for like days and weeks on end. I mean, still people are debating this. Were you first of all expecting any level of sort of like pushback on that? Because number one, I think in your article you added like numbers, like actual like social media figures, dollar figures, like that kind of prove that. But like just the general discourse in Formula One, like are you ever sort of like, what are y'all talking about when it comes to Lewis Hamilton and his level of impact on the sport?
Yeah. So I mean, when I asked the question, I
Mm-hmm.
was just at kind of a media roundtable for the launch of Williams' 2024 car.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wanted to possibly get a good quote for the story. I had been working on it for a while and wanted to get a driver's perspective. And Alex has kind of dipped his toe in the
Mm-hmm.
waters with fashion. And
Yeah.
um, so I just kind of threw a question at him about Lewis, and it was right after the Ferrari news. So it kind of had pertained to that. Like, we
Right.
saw such growth in Ferrari from that news, and
Mm-hmm.
there was so much discussion around it. So that's kind of where the quote came from.
Yeah.
And like the things that Lewis is able to do that maybe because he is so big,
Right.
that not everyone can do that, you know? Like, it takes a certain type of person, a certain type
Star
of
power.
interest and star power to be able to be in fashion, be in music, be in culture the way
Right.
that Lewis is, and also be at the top level of a profession, a sport like
Right.
Formula One. Um, so it is one of those things when you do interviews like that, when the quote comes,
Mm-hmm.
you know that that's what it is, sort of.
Right.
Um, and so I walked out of that like
Yeah, got
that
it. Yeah.
that's good. I'll throw that into the piece. And it is you want numbers to back that kind of stuff up. You know that especially with Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
people have a tendency to doubt him
Yeah,
and
downplay.
doubt
Mm-hmm.
completely. And so you want to just have a little bit of proof in there to back up your
Yeah.
claim and back up Alex's claim. Like it wasn't even my claim. It was like
Right.
he's
Alex
someone
Albon,
who's
who
with
works with him.
him
Yeah.
like every weekend, has worked with him for years
Yeah.
and still feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I added that in. It was basically that Lewis has currently now he has 36.8 million Instagram followers, and F1 as a sport has 28.1 million
Yeah.
followers. So from that, you can kind of take that the influence and the reach is larger,
It's huge.
at
Yeah.
least on social media, for Lewis than it is for F1. And I think from that we heard a lot about from other athletes, from musicians, from fashion people saying that
Mm-hmm.
they only watch for Lewis, or Lewis is the only thing that they know about Formula One,
Right.
or they're attending races because they want to watch Lewis. So yeah, I think it's kind of hard
Yeah,
to fight
disagree.
against it, but definitely people did.
Yeah. I did an article with India Robbie. I think she's one of your colleagues.
Hmm.
And she asked me about like Lewis Hamilton's impact. And in that, I don't think it made it to the article, but we definitely talked about this. Just like some fans' perception, I think, of Lewis, maybe like they're detractors, they don't really like him,
Hmm.
fine. But I think sometimes their level of like analysis about Lewis and his impact is not based in reality, like to put it like nicely, I guess. Because, like you said, it's not just that like we think he's like this superstar, iconic sort of, figure. It's that like there's actually numbers to back it up. Like,
Yeah,
him attending a fashion show generates revenue.
right.
Um, you
Or
know,
his Las Vegas looks, like the
yeah.
revenue that was brought in for those
Hmm.
brands. I think it was like Bottega. I can't remember fully what all looks he wore.
Like
There might have been
Versace.
Versace.
Hmm.
That those looks brought in a very significant
Yeah.
amount of money for those brands.
Yeah.
Like,
It's insane. I mean, it's quantifiable. So that's why
mhm,
it's just like it is interesting, the community sometimes of Formula One, it feels different to other like sport communities where you kind of see the legends in those sports be sort of revered, respected, constantly credited with, you know, um, driving the sport either in popularity or like, in how people perform. There's always some level of like, sort of like, admiration. And so I think in Formula One, it's interesting because, you have Lewis who has achieved everything there is to achieve in the sport multiple times over. And then you see him sort of crossing over into like fashion, music in the, background somewhere, movies. He's going to have a feature film. He's going to also be doing documentaries. I think he also just produced a film that's going to be showing at a film festival. So it's like he's really like embedding himself culturally in a lot of places. And I don't think that people understand that sometimes the first place people meet him is not in a race
mhm,
car.
yeah.
So I don't know, do you have like, you started watching 2017, 2018, like was there like was he like part of why you started watching? Was there something else that kind of made you interested?
I mean, he wasn't.
Yeah.
I kind of just started watching because I had some friends that were interested
Mm,
in it, and they turned on a race,
yeah.
one Sunday, and because, like I said, I had this sort of obsessive personality,
Yeah.
I quickly took off from there, and like
Yeah.
now I can't really watch races with other people. I like so intense about
I'm the
it, and I'm
same.
a
Yeah.
Ferrari fan, so sometimes
Nice.
I have to like walk out and be upset.
Take a breather.
I
Yeah.
don't like. I don't need other people to see that.
Right. They don't need to see you at your low moment.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's gonna be me next year with
no, it's gonna
joining the
be
Tifosi. Yeah,
good.
it's gonna be great. Yeah,
We're
can't
gonna
wait.
be we're gonna be happy. All things are gonna be well with Fred.
I love that.
I have
Yeah,
a lot more confidence. I love Fred. I
me
think he's
too.
like
He's such a
just
character.
he's the best, and I just like trust him in a lot of ways
Yeah,
from all of his work in his career and just the way that he has kind of like been a father figure to a lot of
yeah.
young drivers
Hmm.
and taken them under his wing. I just like believe in
I do
what he
too.
says and what he can do. And though like this season and it hasn't always been everything, and last season really wasn't everything,
Yeah,
but I think he got it at a time when it needed a lot of work. So you can't really
yeah. I agree.
blame him in
Yeah,
my
he
mind.
inherited some stuff, and I feel like he's making some decisions that are like spinning the ship, like turning the ship around, I guess, as you want to say. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been nice to see. I just like his personality. Like
Hmm.
he's serious about his business, but
Yeah.
he's good vibes. Like I
Yeah.
enjoy seeing him giggling and laughing and spitting champagne on people. I'm like,
The
thank
video of
you
him
for
like hitting Science's head
yeah.
into the gate.
Like I love that. Like we need more characters in Formula One. Like
Hmm.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to circle back to your article and Lewis. And what I really like, though, is how you kind of framed the NBA and the WNBA as kind of the like roadmap for athletes bringing fashion into sports. Can you touch a little bit on that, like why you kind of took that angle with this article, and I guess maybe like what you were trying to what you're trying to say in terms of like how Formula One can use that to their advantage.
Yeah. So I've always been really interested in the kind of tunnel fits
Hmm.
phenomenon. I think when it comes to fashion and sports, that's really the first thing that you think about
Yeah.
because Instagram accounts like League Fits exist and are huge and have over 1 million followers,
Hmm.
and brands want to work with NBA athletes more than maybe in any other sport. They're
Yeah.
every single basketball player in the NBA practically is showing up to a game in a look
Right.
and expecting to be photographed and potentially make it to league fits.
Right.
So I think, and that has been happening for a long time before league fits, before anything, the NBA has been really creating this conversation.
Hmm.
You know, it really started in the 2005 2006 season when the NBA instituted a dress code that mandated players to strictly wear business attire to
Mm.
games. It was a largely
Oh, I remember.
racist dress code.
Yes. Hmm.
And it led to a lot of players at the time really coming up with ways to get around it. So
Yeah.
they would wear bolder colors and accessorize in different ways with sunglasses and handbags and a
Yeah.
bold tie or whatever it was. And because of that, looks got really interesting.
Hmm.
And as time has gone on, I think it's made fashion really become synonymous with the NBA, and players have only gotten bolder. And you have
Yeah.
people like Shea and Devin Booker and Tyrese who just the looks are incredible and like they do look like you're
Yeah.
walking off of a runway. And I think because of that, it sort of did usher in this ability for other athletes and other leagues to feel comfortable
Hmm.
playing around. We see it in the NFL. I feel like the looks with like Travis, Kelsey, he was showing up to looks for the
Yeah.
Super Bowl or whatever it is that that blew up. And then
Yeah.
obviously there's Lewis who kind of went the same route. He's shows up to every single race in looks, every
Hmm.
single session. Like even with these other drivers who are getting into it, that's like the media day.
Right.
or practice. It's not every single day of a race weekend, but Lewis is committed to his looks and his stylist
Yeah.
is committed to helping him create them, and they're kind of on a mission to change the way that fashion and Formula One come together.
Yeah.
Um, and it's pretty amazing to watch. It just like, that's kind of why I had created this Instagram account, F1 Paddock Fits. It's very small, but to have a place to showcase all of the looks as
Hmm.
Lewis's influence continues to have an effect on other drivers, and as you see people like Pierre and Zhou Guanyu experimenting in different
Yeah.
ways and being able to express themselves in ways that maybe they weren't able to before, or drivers before Lewis weren't able to express themselves.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, for me, I'm like, more power to them. I love seeing specifically men. And I feel like, I don't know if you see this or feel this, especially since you're a bit closer to the fashion industry than I am. But I feel like we're kind of in an era of men's fashion where they are not just able to express themselves, but it's much more like acceptable for them to kind of like push the boundaries a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
try new things, experiment with new things. I think Formula One sometimes like can feel like it's still clinging to the past a little bit, especially when you have drivers that aren't necessarily embracing it, which, it's not everybody, fashion isn't everybody's thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much more to life than wearing your sponsor's t-shirt to the racetrack. And so I think for me, like, it is kind of like seeing other athletes and other industries perform literally from the time they get out of the off the bus,
Mm-hmm.
into the time when they're actually like on the field or the court or whatever. Like, it's interesting seeing them kind of engage fashion in that way of like being able to express themselves from the moment you first see them. I think the NBA, the tunnel is like incredibly effective. I don't follow the NBA.
Right.
I would like to. It's just like so many basketball games. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Every day feels like the playoffs. Like, I don't know. But even like the WNBA, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark at the draft, like I was kind of moved. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll tune into the WNBA this season, and follow that. So I think it's like such an incredibly effective like marketing tool, but it
Mm-hmm.
also allows you to kind of get that perspective of like who this athlete is.
Yes.
They're saying a lot through their clothes, more so than at like a press conference. So yeah, I just think it's
Yeah.
interesting.
I think that's really one of the biggest things about why people care about fashion, the style of athletes,
Yeah.
because I think more, and I touch on this in the article, I think more than any other celebrity, more than
Hmm.
actors or influencers or whatever it is, athletes, everyone plays a sport at some point
Yeah.
in their life. Like when you're a little kid, you're signed
Right.
up for soccer or football or ballet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you always kind of are like, I could go pro, like as a little kid. And maybe
Yeah.
you don't, but I think then you have these people that you look up to
Right.
from when you're like a little kid, and you might never be able to meet them. Like, maybe you probably won't. Most people don't get to
Right.
meet their heroes, the people that they've been watching every single week or multiple times a week if you're like into baseball or something.
Right.
And for their whole life as they grow up. And so the one thing that maybe you have to understand who they are off of the court or the track or
Hmm.
whatever it is what they wear and the way that they choose to present themselves. Because no matter what, if you don't care about fashion, that's fine. What you're wearing says something about
Right.
who you are, what you did that morning, what things that you care about. Maybe you care about strictly utilitarian things, like you want
Right.
your clothes to work for you, you want pockets, you want like easy things that go
Right.
with everything. That is still
Like a
a
uniform.
fashion choice.
Steve Jobs
And
comes
then,
to mind.
yes, just something easy that you don't have
Yeah.
to think about. That's still a conscious decision that
Hmm.
you've made about what you care about when it comes to clothes and what you prioritize.
Right.
Then there are people like Lewis who cares about using his clothes as a form of expression
Mm-hmm.
and using what he wears as a way to open the doors for up and coming designers that maybe wouldn't be able to get in front of as many eyes without someone like Lewis or whatever it is, like
Right.
it says a lot about who you are without saying a single word,
Right.
and you might never get to talk to those people. So that's some way to communicate with them.
Absolutely. I feel like for me, funny enough, like Formula One for some reason has been very inspiring to me. Despite, what's happening on track, it's not super interesting, but kind of like you, I do like tons of deep dives, rabbit holes, like hyperfixating on
Mm-hmm.
it basically. And for me, it's definitely something new. And Lewis specifically is an interesting study for me because he's inspiring me in ways that I didn't think I would be, like fashion wise. Like I'm somebody who loves wearing black, earth
Mm-hmm.
tones, beiges. And I find myself,
Yeah, look, you're
looking at,
wearing
I'm like,
green.
I know
I love
I'm wearing
it.
green today. Like I never wear color, but you know what I mean? Like it's so interesting that it's like, yeah, that communication between the fans, between the drivers or the athletes is very like, I guess symbiotic almost. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're inspired by us, we're inspired by them. I hope to see in Formula One, I definitely hope to see through like Lewis, Show, Pierre, like all the drivers who, are really trying something different. I do hope that it like actually affects like deep in the culture of Formula One. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Some of the people who are really scared to like dip their toe into fashion, like, I hope they know it's okay. Like, you're
Yeah,
not
I
going to
hope they're
die. You know
doing
what I
it
mean?
just
Like, yeah.
because they don't want to, which
Right.
is fine. Like I don't judge anyone who
Right.
feels they want to prioritize something else.
Right.
That's totally fine. If you want to think about something else, maybe you want to think about gaming
Right.
or like that's a real thing, and
Yeah, absolutely.
and maybe that's something that you want to spend your time. It takes a lot of time to get to like get dressed, and like Lewis said in the WWD article that we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about earlier about the WhatsApp event, it takes a lot of planning
Mm-hmm.
to create the looks that he brings out, and he's doing it week after week,
Yeah.
over and over and over. And in the off season, he's doing it at events. He's like,
It's a lot. Yeah.
I'm hoping he's going to the Met Gala. I
Me
I don't
too.
know,
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
but like that takes a lot of work. And even
Mm-hmm.
from like the perspective of a fashion editor, I wake up at 5 a.m. to like get my day together and plan my outfit and
Yeah.
figure that kind of stuff out. I look at photos constantly. I look at references. My style means something to me,
Yeah.
and so I prioritize it. If that's not something that you prioritize, then you're not going to want to spend the same amount
Right.
of time that Lewis does. You're going to want to like you're given a uniform and you like to wear it,
Right.
and that's fine.
Yeah. I hope that, like you said, if there's people who are scared to venture out, that they do, though. I think that's
Hmm.
for me, what I really hope is that there's people who have just always wanted to explore, but we never culturally were in a place where it was like acceptable. And I think that's kind of for me, like what I get from Lewis, or athletes like Lewis who are really,
Hmm.
really adventurous is like, you know, you can get called every name in the book or ridiculed a million times, but it's not going to stop anything. Like I'm still going to put this outfit on. I'm still going to look, really good, and feel good. And I think like seeing that like over and over, like as many times per year as we do from him, I think is very like psychologically impactful because it's like he could just be putting on jeans and a t-shirt and calling it a day. But he doesn't. He like kind of pushes through all the like noise, the boundaries, the barriers, and like gives us a look for,
Hmm.
3 or 4 days out of each weekend. So I don't know, I just think that's really interesting. And kind of in like a similar vein, like switching gears slightly to another article that you did about female content creators, because I kind of feel like this kind of fits in that wheelhouse. Like fashion is for some reason seen very much like as a primarily female topic.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like obviously through conversations like these, I think there is something to kind of like helping people understand that, like, yes, fashion can be frivolous and fun, but there is like a lot of thought behind it. There's a lot of expression behind it. There's a lot of money behind it. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many different ways to like
It's like a
look at.
huge business. Like,
It's a business at the end of the day, just like
yeah.
Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, like it's almost to me like crazy to see, them not fully embrace, fashion and the way that it kind of like, can draw eyes. You do see Formula One starting to kind of, you know, the ice is melting a little bit. They're kind of warming up to the idea. They're creating collaborations, doing really cool merchandising, but it still feels like they're like that little tiny step behind,
Mm-hmm.
like really fully pushing onto fashion. But I loved your content or your female content creator article because I think you had spoken with Tony Cohen Brown, and she just mentioned like how female F1 fans, we consume the sport differently
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about the sport differently. And this is like kind of one of those ways that I think, it's like our wheelhouse. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think maybe you agree with that, but do you kind of elaborate, like what, like as an F1 fan and a content creator, a writer, all of these things, like where do you kind of see yourself kind of in this fandom? Like, how do you see yourself maybe like pushing it or changing it or just existing within the fandom?
I mean, I think that what I want to do is create really smart, interesting conversations
Yeah.
around fashion and Formula One.
Hmm.
I think there weren't a lot of conversations around it prior, and I saw it all the time in the NBA and other things. But because of what I do, I saw F1 from a completely different perspective. I
Yeah.
saw it from a perspective of someone who doesn't really watch sport. At the time that I started watching Formula One, I wasn't watching sports.
Hmm.
I grew up watching basketball, and then I kind of stopped. And then
Same.
I watched hockey for a long time because I'm from Chicago, and the
Yeah.
Blackhawks were very good at that time. And so I was really invested in that.
Hmm.
And then when I was like in college and graduating, I wasn't watching anything, and I didn't wasn't interested in it. And so to come into the sport and be so, like you said, drawn into it immediately, like
Yeah.
something about it was so alluring and interesting, and to see the fashion side of it and the luxury side of it from the perspective of someone who worked in fashion,
Hmm.
it just it felt like an obvious thing to talk about.
Right.
And I think a lot of what we see when people talk about fashion in Formula One is like what the girlfriends wear,
Yeah.
or just it seems a little bit like
Shallow.
shallow instead of
Yeah.
being, which they're what they wear is great. They're
Hmm.
also expressing themselves, and I love to see that side. And I want them also to be
Highlighted and
highlighted,
yeah.
and their thought goes into their outfits as well. Um, but I think it's important to also look at it from a business perspective,
Hmm.
and what money and Lewis and impressions come from Lewis's outfits,
Right.
and what the future of this looks like, and what the potential opportunities are for fashion brands in F1, and for F1 to partner with fashion brands kind of on both sides. There's just a lot of topics that haven't been covered. So
Yeah.
in my mind, though now I think fashion and Formula One are covered kind of a lot.
Yeah.
When I first wrote that first piece about the intersection of fashion and Formula One, it hadn't really been written about at all,
Hmm.
or just very there wasn't a lot of content around it. Um, and so I just wanted to kind of use my expertise in fashion and my newfound kind of
Yeah.
interest in and growing expertise in Formula One to create interesting and smart and not yet talked about conversations
Yeah.
about the two. And I want to continue to do that as much as possible and dive into the history. I think, like you were saying with the archivist type thing, I don't
Hmm.
like. archive
The
the
moniker,
pieces,
yeah. Oh.
but like what that page is just looking into the history
Mhm.
of fashion in the sport. You have people like Senna and Schumacher and Gerhard Berger who always had amazing looks on, and like
Yeah,
I wish that drivers today would dress like that sort of, because you see people
absolutely.
like Leclerc and Sainz, who I think both have like pretty tame style.
Y
Well, actually, Leclerc's style is a little out there at times.
It could be funky, yeah.
But I think like that general concept of like jeans
Mhm.
and a t-shirt, or jeans
Right.
and a button-down shirt, like that's what Senna did best. Was
Yeah,
like Levi's and a button-down shirt and a cool pair of aviators and a
yeah,
hat and some like cool 80s sneakers or a pair of loafers.
yeah.
And it's so simple but looks so good. Every photo you see of him from the 80s and 90s, it's like, this is the best photo. This is
It's
the
the
best outfit I've
coolest
ever
fit.
seen.
Yeah,
And I fell for that really quick. And
yeah.
so I just like wanted to create a page where I could basically post the photos that
Mhm.
is like my entire Pinterest feed, my that Instagram feed of like who I follow on that account, which is called The Pinnacle of Fashion.
Great name, by the way.
Um, thank you.
Amazing, yeah.
Um, is all just like art, like motorsport images from history, and I don't know. It's such a like a cool golden era of the sport,
Yeah.
and everything about it was cool. And like you were always seeing models at the track, and
Mhm.
they were dating or married to drivers, and their looks were incredible. And
Yeah,
I don't know, I also just think like photos from that time are always cool. Like
absolutely. The film
the film is
count,
just,
yeah, just everything
it's like
looked
the
amazing.
colors pop,
Yeah,
and yeah.
everything was great. Like you said, like everything was cool. Like even smoking was cool. I think
Yeah.
on one of the images you shared was like a Marlboro cowboy hat. Oh my god! I was like, I want that. Like I don't want to encourage smoking or anything, but also that hat's amazing. It's like a
I
white cowboy hat with the red logo. Oh, great!
I know that.
It's so good.
So one of the hats was on Nina Rint, who was the
Mm,
wife of Jochen Rindt, who was a Formula One driver,
hmm.
and his wife was a Finnish model. She is a Finnish model,
Yeah.
and she would just show up in these
Mm,
incredible looks. And it was like that era of Twiggy, and everything was kind of mod,
hmm.
but she also, her clothes were really wearable, and that hat like has just
Yeah. I saw it
stuck
on
in
your
my
page and I was like,
brain.
oh, do I need that? Like,
It's so hard to find. I like, who knew, it must be like a custom
yeah.
thing. I did want to mention on here, speaking of that hat,
Yeah.
this vintage brand, New Vintage, DM'd me because I talked about this hat a lot. And they had this similar, I mean, it wasn't the same, but
Yeah.
it's like a cowboy hat that has a Marlboro band.
Yeah.
And she sent it to me, and I just got it today.
Oh,
And I'm like
oh,
so
I'm so excited
excited.
for you.
I'm like not planning on, I haven't bought tickets for Coda, but I had someone, I did like a Western
Yeah.
for what to wear to the race last year.
Yeah.
And I wore my cowboy hat around the whole
Incredible.
time, and everyone was like, "This is a little cheesy." It's like, whatever.
Like, listen, it's fulfilling something in me right now. Sorry.
Yeah. And so I'm like, maybe I need to buy tickets now
Yeah.
that Eminem is gonna be there.
Exactly. That would be amazing. Oh, wow. I'm so excited for you. Like, I'm going to have to find some vintage stuff and start rocking it. I think that's the other kind of cool thing. I mean, with fashion and Formula One, like obviously there's like a ton of new merch
Mhm.
available, new collections, but it is interesting seeing the fans kind of like DIY a lot of stuff, go the vintage route, finding stuff on eBay, Etsy that's, from like the 80s. And I was looking at like hats from like the early 2000s because I
Mhm.
just randomly started watching like 2007 season.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, do I want a BMW like F1 hat? Like they don't even race anymore, but it's just like everything looked so much cooler back then. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I know
Like,
the merch now, though it's like more high tech, like
yeah.
you have players in it that, like, as players, as in brands,
Yeah.
creating these pieces that are like true athletic wear, you know, like
Right.
they're
Like
sweat resistant
performance wear.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is great, you know, in some ways if you're in a place like Texas, like we were talking about, where it's
You kind of need it.
105
Yeah.
degrees or something. But they just don't have that, like,
Yeah.
they're not as unique, and they're, I think because they're mass produced,
Yeah.
it's just a little less exciting. Whereas like if you find a piece that's was specific to a race, a specific track, a
Mm-hmm.
specific year of a race that you love, and you can find that, and it's like
Yeah.
incredible. Like there's nothing better than that. That's
Yeah.
always going to be a more memorable item and a piece you wear more
A
than
hundred
like the same t-shirt.
100%. Absolutely. I think ASAP Rocky's Puma collab,
Hmm.
they just did a release of like this jacket,
Yeah, it's
and it's
cool.
like looks like everything is like airbrushed.
Hmm.
There's like a Shell logo and like a Ferrari logo, and I was like, I'm gonna go take a t-shirt to the beach and I'm gonna get that airbrushed, and like I'm gonna just
Yeah,
like copy that vibe and save $400. Like it's gonna be
right.
fun. So I'm excited for that era. I don't know, like it just feels like as an adult, like having a new hobby like this, I just feel like, oh, I could do so many things. I mean, last summer everybody was making friendship bracelets and exchanging them at the races. All these different people, small designers are making collections to, sell to other fans. And it's almost like we know each other better than the brands
Yeah,
themselves know us, which I
yeah,
think is really cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I would like to see from the brands creating merch and just brands in general who want
Hmm.
to get into Formula One is like ask women
Yeah.
what they want
Yeah. Please.
and like use your audience because first of all, merch traditionally for sports is made for men.
Right.
And so it's like women are kind of left to buy like the one woman's item or to
Right.
just buy like a men's item, you know,
Right.
like that doesn't fit them correctly or whatever it is.
Hmm.
I think some brands that have done, I thought the Reese McLaren collab was really smart and done
Yeah. I
and
like the,
executed in a good way. It's
yeah.
expensive, but,
Yes.
but
Very.
there are, I think like what McLaren has done really well when
Hmm.
it comes to fashion is like they also partnered with Abercrombie. So then,
Yes.
and that stuff is also was executed very well. And like the pieces are really soft and they're vintage inspired and they come in a wide range of sizes and there's kids versions and there's men's versions and there's women's versions. And it's
Hmm.
like that it's giving an option for both. Maybe you want to save up and you want to buy a jacket, a $700 jacket from the
Hmm.
Reese McLaren collaboration because you love Reese, you trust the quality of the pieces, and you also are a big papaya fan and
Right.
you want this cool piece that they created. But that's obviously not going to be the only merch that you buy ever again.
Hmm.
So maybe you buy like a few t-shirts from this Abercrombie collab. Or if you want to start out and you buy an Abercrombie item and then you work your way up to a more expensive item. But I think
Yeah.
it's good to have both. You
Right.
don't want, like, I think what Ferrari does, which I love the Ferrari brand, but it's super expensive. And then it's like really hard to get stuff
Yes.
from, unless it's vintage
Yeah.
that is Ferrari that's a little bit more affordable. So I think
Yeah.
they could stand to balance it out a little bit more. Though I think Ferrari obviously is a brand that's steeped in luxury. So they
Yes.
want to continue that, which
Oh my
it's all a
goodness.
marketing thing.
It is. And it's interesting because I didn't really know before that Ferrari had their own fashion label. It was actually John Elkin. I think he was in the paddock and he had like this velour, like this blue velour jumper wrapped around
Mhm.
his shoulders, and it had like the Ferrari like imprint like all over it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I want a velour
Their stuff
Ferrari.
is
And it's like
really nice.
navy and it was like really cute. And I was like, okay, I like this. It's like $500. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right, maybe I'll, save up for that. And then I think they had like a leather hat that I love,
Yeah.
like a leather
I went to
baseball
the
cap.
store in Milan and I
So
was
good.
like, oh, I'm going to buy
Yeah,
something, you know? And then I was like,
maybe not.
I don't have that much, but
Yeah, one
someday.
day. Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
One
it's
day.
cool to have because
Absolutely.
it, like I was saying, the brand is steeped in luxury,
Hmm.
and so is Formula One,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it does like makes sense to extend into culture in a different way
Yeah.
and to have luxury fashion come together with luxury sport
Hmm.
and luxury cars. Like
Luxury
it
lifestyle.
builds, it does,
It's
it
so
builds a
good. Yeah.
lifestyle for the Ferrari
Hmm.
customer that to me is like genius. Like if
Yeah.
you can get someone who will spend $250,000 on a car, which
Hmm.
they've obviously bought other expensive cars before them, because we all know that that's kind of a
Right.
thing with Ferrari. They'll spend that much on cars. They're going to spend that much on clothes. You might as well bring them in to
Yeah.
spend more money with you by wearing it.
Upselling.
And
Yeah.
then they're driving your car and in a car that's very, everyone knows it's a Ferrari.
Hmm.
And then they're wearing clothes that say Ferrari on them. And like, it's just like easy walking
Yeah.
um,
It's like hand in
marketing.
hand. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely watching F1 and fashion has been very fun from like a marketing perspective because you just see everybody's just trying every idea possible and kind of like seeing what lands and seeing what sticks. But I feel like it's interesting this day and age or this time period that we're in because you kind of see we're at like the ground level,
Hmm.
I think, of fashion really starting to become a huge deal in Formula One. Like the teams are taking it serious, the drivers are taking it serious, you know. Um, yeah, the fans are taking it serious. So it's been really interesting to see it all kind of like evolve. And this has just only been in the last like, you know, handful of years. So I can't even imagine where we're going to be, you know, in the next like
Hmm.
couple of years, especially I think Lewis to Ferrari is going to be a huge deal.
Yeah,
I,
massive.
I can't even imagine what they're going to like kind of do in terms of like collaborations with other partners. I wonder if they'll get him into the Ferrari brand. I'm sure they'll
I'm sure.
have him some
Yeah.
stuff on. Um,
But I'm
but
also curious with like
yeah,
Leclerc then, like
same.
he's been a little bit close, like,
Mhm.
Ferrari has for a long time, it's been like Armani and
Mhm.
Ferrari, and it's kind of strict in what they can wear when you think about things
Yeah.
like shoots,
Mhm.
and editorials. Um, but you have to assume that Lewis has built into his contract his ability to wear what he
Absolutely.
wants.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, really, and the thing that I like want to know the most, and
Yeah, me
we'll just
too.
have to kind of wait and see, is like if Leclerc will be granted similar
Yeah.
allowances to explore a little bit more. I
Mhm.
mean, like we saw in Drive to Survive, he wanted to start a clothing line, and
Yeah, they were
that
like,
kind
"No."
of got shut
Yeah.
down. But if that will be something that we'll maybe see
Mhm.
moving forward, and I'm
Yeah.
also curious to see like how Ferrari does the brand with
Mhm.
Lewis. Like Rocco, the creative director, said in a different story, an interview that I did with him for a different story. He
Mhm.
basically said that like Leclerc and Sainz being at the top level of their sport are like the perfect embodiment of success and strength and energy, and they're exactly what people want to recognize in themselves. Like they
Yeah.
want to see that same kind of thing and they want to strive towards that, so that makes them a perfect marketing
Yeah. I
agent.
agree. Yeah.
And to have Lewis, who's like that times a million,
Right.
I'm very curious to see like how they'll use him
Yeah.
and how he'll use them, and like what kind of that relationship
Yeah.
will bloom into
Absolutely.
next year.
I'm so excited for that.
Me
I
too.
really am. And I'm honestly, I mean, obviously I'm excited for Lewis, but I am also excited for the excuse me, the other drivers to see kind of like where their style is going to evolve
Hmm.
because like you mentioned, like Ferrari was like notoriously really strict about like what they could wear. It does seem lately they've relaxed it a little bit.
Yeah,
um
which might be a result of this.
yeah, I think they're kind of trying to like, you know, ease into the next year or so, which maybe brings me to like unlocking potential. We always talk about that in Formula One, like the cars unlocking their potential. But
Hmm.
let's talk about these guys and their brands. Like, if you could style or help out any of these drivers, who would it be and why? Like, whose potential are we unlocking today?
I mean, I often say that I want to style Signs
Mm,
because he kind of reminds me of Senna in
yeah,
like appearance,
yeah, like the
and I
dark
feel like
hair. Yeah.
we could like dress dress him to like really good.
Yeah.
I also, I say this all the time. I just want everyone, I've said this to like Levi's before. I want all of the drivers to go in to the like Levi's vintage archive and be fitted with a pair of like 80s, 90s,
Yes.
501s that fit them perfectly. And then they won't wear other jeans.
Yeah.
I don't want overly baggy jeans and I don't want skinny jeans. I just want
there's so many
jeans
cuts of
that fit
jeans.
right.
Yeah. Like, oh my God. That's not the only two styles of jeans. Yeah.
Like I just want like good jeans that
Yeah.
look good and like you'll wear them every day once you have them. That's how
Right.
jeans work. Once you find the pair that is good, you only wear those.
Keep them forever. Yeah.
I'm very adamant about that. That's like my life mission is for
everybody to have well-fitting jeans.
to have some 501s that they love. I'm trying to think else. Like, I mean, Max is an obvious one. You kind of want to get him out of his comfort zone and style him in something interesting. I thought my friend Kanika, who wrote the WWE article, we always talk about this one editorial that Logan Sargent did. I think it was Font Magazine.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it was
I
like
remember.
so editorial.
Yes.
And we were like obsessed with the images and we asked him about it. And I think it just takes a certain level of getting used to. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If you're not comfortable yet wearing high fashion clothes, that's a hard thing to get used to. And if you've been wearing like sports clothes your whole life.
Flip-flops. Yeah.
So I, like we were saying before, I really want a lot of these drivers to just like experiment in the same way that we all have to figure out what our personal style is and dive into yourself and be like, what do I like? What does my style look like? And I think it's been fun to watch people like Leclerc and Gasly kind of learn what they like.
Yeah.
And like they maybe like Gasly has said in the past that Lewis did pave the way in a lot of ways for fashion and drivers to feel comfortable. And I think I like that he, for example, didn't just start dressing like Lewis. It's like he is exploring fashion, but in a way, in his own way that he feels comfortable with and what he sees that he thinks is cool.
Yeah.
And that's really all that anyone can ask for, you know, like you don't have to like take a look from the runway immediately and wear it. Like, that's fine if that's too bold for you.
Absolutely.
Like I don't take full runway looks and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wear this out. Like
absolutely. It's hard
wear
to
this
do
to
that.
the office.
Yeah.
Like even you see Lewis, sometimes he's wearing head to toe a runway look, and sometimes I think recently he wore Bottega and it had like a top version and then it was these gray bottoms that kind of flopped open.
I love those pants.
And it had a top. I love that look. But he just wore it had like a top and then a white tank underneath, and he just wore the white tank, which is so much more relaxed and approachable. And I think that's kind of that's what our goal is always when it comes to fashion. It's just like, here's inspiration, take with it what you may, and like pull pieces that feel comfortable with you. And, you know, so.
I agree. I love that. I mean, that's, I think all fashion should be is like, you need to be comfortable in what no one's asking anybody, I think, to just like pull random stuff off of a shelf and throw it on, because even if you had the most expensive outfit head to toe, like, and you're not comfortable in it, like it doesn't do anything for you. Yeah. So there has to be like a level of confidence in what you're wearing and of yourself. So looking forward a little bit, we're going to Miami this week. Well, we are not going to Miami. Formula One's going to Miami.
No, we're not going.
Unfortunately. And of course, Lewis Hamilton Fashion Week is going to be like the main draw. Let's be for real. And I was wondering, do you like have any like predictions or something you maybe want to see Lewis wearing?
Yes.
Strutting down the paddock.
Mean, always. You know, he hasn't. One of my favorite looks that he ever wore was this Miu Miu look, and it was like the total sleeveless. You know, everyone who follows Lewis's style loves the sleeveless look.
Yeah.
So I think about that look all the time, and it's like really the only time I think that he's worn Miu Miu. So Miu Miu's like latest fall collection was really hyped, and there were a couple of men's looks, but I also think he's not afraid to like, and because he has these relationships with designers,
Mhm.
able to customize something that maybe ties to the collection if it's a women's wear collection, and create something for him that works with his style. So there are a couple of looks that I loved. Gloves, I think, are really interesting and they kind of tie into
Mm.
motorsport. Um, so there were a couple of looks from there. I
Yeah.
love like an all gray look with a little touch of blue. I feel
Yeah.
like blue is also a really good color on Lewis.
I agree.
So some fun Miu Miu looks or Prada. I think he hasn't worn Prada in a while, and I always love when
Yeah.
he wears a Prada look. The men's Prada show for fall had these really cool, like almost like swim caps.
Hmm. Do I
I think it'd be
remember
kind of
that?
fun to like play around with some
Head
head
accessories?
head
Yeah.
accessories. There was a cool like big navy bomber in the collection that I also
Yeah.
think could play in. He's said before he doesn't care about
I
the
was gonna
fact that it's
say.
like 200 degrees in Miami right now
Yeah.
and 100% humidity. He'll do it.
He always talks
So
about how the fact that he dresses for the climate, and I'm like, "Sir, I've never in my entire life seen you dress for the." Like, he wore like
unless
a
my
leather jumpsuit or a sweatsuit once to Miami, and I couldn't understand it because last time I've been to Miami, I couldn't wear I had to like I needed linen, like a bathing suit. Like, he's got a full
The
leather outfit
day
on.
that he wore that like purple sequin jumpsuit
Oh my
in
god.
Miami,
Yeah.
I was wearing like in the paddock a one-piece swimsuit
Oh my
with like
god.
a skirt with cutouts because I
Right,
was like,
to get
I
air,
need as
like
much air and flow. Like I wore the swimsuit because it needed to be sweat.
Right,
It
you're like,
needed
"I
to be
need ventilation."
waterproof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miami's
Um,
no joke for the humidity and the heat, so I don't understand his
yeah.
yeah.
Well, kind of speaking of that, there are a few Dior looks that I loved with these like leather shell
Mm.
tops that I
Oh,
think
yeah, I remember
could look
those.
good.
Yeah,
And he's like big into Dior. I feel like he wears Dior a lot.
yeah.
I always love Louis and Loewe because I think it's a little bit
Same.
bold
Yes.
and sculptural, and it really
Mhm.
feels like an artistic move for him. And not
Yeah,
many people, I think Loewe is something that you have to really understand your sense of style and
yeah,
have a lot of confidence to pull off, especially a runway look.
yeah.
Like there are
Agreed.
pieces that I think are very commercial and you can wear them, but when it comes to the runway,
Yeah,
Jonathan Anderson really is experimental with the
yeah.
looks that go together. Um, so I'd love for him to wear. There's one look that's like a green cropped cable knit sweater and these really cool like yellow green melon
Mm.
colored kind of like billowy
Yeah.
trousers that have the like one half attached belt, which was like a big trend at the Loewe show. And I think that would be
Mm.
fun. He's been kind of sticking with more like of a muted color palette
Yeah. It's
lately.
been
I mean,
pretty
there's been
tame.
red,
Yeah.
but I feel like kind of and like the red, white, and blue for Tommy. But I feel like it's been a little tame,
Mhm.
and so I'm wanting a pop.
Me too. Speaking of Loewe, there was a look from I think their spring summer show. It was like both like the top and the bottom was like this slate gray, and
Oh,
it's like sparkly. So a little bit like the sparkly jumpsuit, like the sequin, not full sequin, but just like sparkle, and it
hmm.
has like that kind of proportion that he always sort of likes, the like arms out tank top tucked
Yeah,
in with like sort of like a more voluminous like bottom, and I
bottom.
feel like he would rock the hell out of that.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
I mean, also if he did custom Loewe, I feel like they've been
Yeah.
doing some incredible beaded work.
Mm,
I was at their preview, and to see these pieces up close was
yeah.
it's like
A dream.
shocking. Like
Mm,
a hoodie, like a zip up hoodie made entirely hand beaded out of the smallest beads into this like beautiful mosaic piece. And I feel like if anyone could wear that,
it would be him.
it'd be Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if anyone could get it, like have access to a piece like that, it would be Eric
Yeah.
and Lewis. Like
Yeah. Eric will make some calls and then we'll see
I
it on
was
the
pretty
paddock.
shocked. I still need this answered, which I haven't gotten yet. Is he wore Drees like right off the runway, straight after Drees announced that he
He
was
was
leaving the
leaving.
brand,
Yeah.
and I was like, and it was during Australia, and I
Hmm.
was like, did he get this look?
Yeah.
because he knew. He found out.
Sending messages.
And he like overnighted this look from the runway. And I was like, I know that he probably didn't. And that's like not that sustainable, I guess.
Right.
But like he has the power to do that.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
enough for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And me too. Honestly, I love it. Any other
I'm
ideas?
trying to think. I loved the cords at Fendi, and I feel like he would totally wear that with like a cashmere tank top.
Yeah.
Like something really inappropriate for the weather, but amazing.
Right.
I'm trying to think. There were a lot of fun like skirt over pants looks. I saw some at
Yes,
Wells
I would love
Bonner.
that.
And I feel like if anyone can pull that off, it's Louis. And he's done
Yeah.
it before and it always looks incredible. And also there's this Dior look that was like these really billowy, like he loves, but still tailored gray,
Mm-hmm.
kind of high-waisted trousers with like a silver gray mesh sheer tank,
Mm.
like shell.
Yeah.
That like we all know that we like the sheer, and Louis likes the sheer looks as well.
It's
Um,
chef kiss. Yeah.
so I feel like that one actually is probably the look that I can most see
Yeah.
him wearing.
Yeah.
So
Some
if you're
good
listening,
options. Yeah.
we'll come back to this.
Yeah. We'll definitely circle back to this and see if any of these predictions came true. And if anybody wants to see any of these looks, come to YouTube. I'll have them all on screen for you guys so you can see, so you don't have to imagine what we're talking about. Eliza, thank you so much for your time. You've been such a great guest, and I feel like I could talk to you all day
I know, for
about
real.
clothes and Lewis Hamilton. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you so much. Anytime I can talk about this kind of stuff, it's like a dream come true. So,
Well, we'll have you back hopefully soon. If people want to like follow you online or follow your work, can you please tell them where they can find you?
yes. So on Instagram, my handle is Eliza Grace Huber. You can also follow the two fashion accounts that I have, which is F1 Paddock Fits and The Pinnacle of Fashion. And then for work on WhoWhatWear, I have an author page. And so all of my stories are populated there. And then I also have the page Sports Fashion on WhoWhatWear also kind of populates all of the sports fashion stories that I
Yeah.
write. So if you want to specifically look into that, then those are all there.
Check it out. Like I said, the two articles that I mentioned in this, I'll also have linked in the description bar so you guys can read them, because I do think that they're really interesting. And like you said, like great, like conversations. And especially if you're not like super familiar with like, you know, the origins of fashion sport, I do think the NBA is like a great like place to look, because like you said, it just kind of, everything kind of popped off from there. And it's been interesting seeing the different ways that it's spawned and evolved, and even within the NBA, still evolving as well. So
yeah, I also think like the way that I like to write is to people who maybe don't know anything about sport and still getting deep into it, but it being accessible enough that like you could not know and still understand, because our reader is not necessarily like someone who knows every single detail about every season of Formula One. There is like an introductory level, but then all of the detail is still there.
Yeah.
So I think something that I always found a little bit like would halt me in reading from some places is that if it was something like a Formula One site, it was almost too like speaking on things that I didn't know yet. And that can put you off or be like, oh, this wasn't for me.
Right.
And I think my goal is to introduce every topic in a way that people can be like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I get it. I'm not like out of the loop.
Right. And pique their interest into like maybe digging deeper on their own. Yeah. That's a great, I mean, that's a great approach. I feel like it should be most people's approach. I mean, I think, you know, trying not to gatekeep Formula One and gatekeep fashion. Like it's boring. It's for everyone. Like the sport is for everyone. Fashion's for everyone. So it's just when you can have those conversations and make them accessible, I think that serves the purpose more, like, you know, gets your message across more. So
we're trying to create a democratic place for fashion and
Absolutely.
Formula One lovers.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone at home who's listening or watching. We really appreciate you as always. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, all those things. You can give us 5-star ratings on Spotify and Apple. We also have Patreon if you want to like replay this with some ad-free content. Go for it. It's all there for you guys. We really appreciate you. We'll see you again on Saturday for, I think, post quali and post sprint. I think there's a sprint race in Miami. Yeah, I know that's not my favorite either.
That's another topic.
That's a topic for a whole other day. So yeah, we'll be back for Saturday for that. And then Tuesday should be regular scheduled programming. So thank you guys all again for listening and watching and tuning in. Put something cute on this week. That is what Lewis Hamilton would want you to do. And remember, no matter what happens in life, keep it on the black stuff. Bye. Where the hell did the balloons come from?
Bye.
Bye. That's amazing.
Look, mate, if you've got this far, clearly you like what we do. So here's a link to subscribe to the Quick Stop F1 family. Give that a click. And here's another link to some more cool on our channel. Sorry, cool stuff. And remember, no matter what happens, keep it on the black stuff. Click the stuff. Click the links. Click the links. Click the links. There. They're there.